Hello, everyone. We are joined here with Steve Sandor from. He's the color commentator for FC Edmonton matches. Hello, Steve. How are you doing?
Doing fine, thanks.
Thanks for coming on. So, to our viewers out there, we are going to be talking about the new GM of FC Edmonton, Jay Ball. He has so much experience in the sport. He worked with the FIFA World Cup for the women's side in Canada. So can you talk a lot more about what Jay brings to the table for FC Edmonton?
Well, I think I've known Jay for a long time. I think I first met Jay in the late 90s in the Oilers press box. So he's been a fixture up there for a couple of decades, I guess, now. He's also been the president of Junior Achievement here in Edmonton, really well known in the community, and also worked on really helping launch the Tour of Alberta, which is probably the biggest cycling event, or one of the biggest cycling events in North America, to really get that launched. People might not like it when I say this, but I feel that for a long time on the business side of things, and I think this is where MLS is getting it right, and a lot of the other leagues that I've seen fail or struggle get it wrong, is they tend to put so-called soccer people in the business part of it. And soccer people tend to have as much as we love them and as much as we're the market, and I know this sounds sacrilegious, I find that sometimes they don't see the forest from the trees very well, because they only look at the soccer communities and say, well, there's all these people that go to the bars on Saturdays and Sunday mornings, all these, kids playing minor soccer. Those are the people we go after. And they kind of go, oh, we're not going to look at the NHL. We're not going to go look at the NFL. We're not going to look at the other leagues and what they're doing. And Jay, the first thing he said is, I take over general manager of the team, and he said that the first thing I'm going to look at is best practices from the Edmonton Oilers. Why are the Oilers always sell out every game? What is the fan experience? What is the crossover? What can we learn from them? What can we learn from the Edmonton Eskimos, our CFL team? Again, a team that draws thousands upon thousands of fans to Commonwealth Stadium for football games. What can we learn from them? I think a lot of times soccer people don't cross over and pay attention very well to other sports. And I think on the business side of things, it's really important to get people maybe who come and have a fresh view. They don't have a lot of history in the sport. I think that's really important. I think Jay's really plugged into the community. And, his job as general manager, and I think maybe that job title fools a few people, but FC Edmonton general manager is really on the business side of the team. Colin Miller, the coach, and he handles the personnel decisions, what's happening on field. Jay Ball's job is going to be, as the GM of the team, is going to be to try to get that shirt sponsor done, try to get some meaningful sponsorships for the team and meaningful corporate partnerships, and to help boost ticket sales, and that means corporate ticket sales, and that's where they have to go.
Talking about non-soccer guys coming in, as you were talking about, the new president for Indy 11, he's not a soccer guy, and I think some fans are like, well, we don't feel confident in this because he's not a soccer guy, you know what I mean? So I understand where they're coming from as a fan, you know what I mean? Because
I've just seen far too many soccer guys at previous leagues that were in here, like when USL had a team here in 2004. Calgary had a team in the mid-2000s in the USL as well. All the leagues I've seen stop and start because so-called soccer guys who don't have enough money to make things happen, but had enough money to launch a team but didn't realize how much money they were going to lose, ended up just crashing because they couldn't reach outside those 1,000 or 2,000 soccer hardcores that would come out. They couldn't reach out because they were so into the soccer community. I wouldn't feel this way if the North American soccer community wasn't so insular, but it is, and it's the big. I think the biggest problem that we have is that we tend to be very snobbish towards some of the other sports. We tend to sort of say, well, we're not going to watch that, and we're not going to do that. We're not going to look at those other sports because we're too good for it because we're soccer fans, and we got to give our head a shake about that, because a lot of times we don't realize that we're actually cutting ourselves off from the fans that we need. I think a lot of times the supporters have this really inflated, and I'm not going to sound terrible, I shouldn't say inflated, it's a bad word to use, but this idea that they alone can keep a football club going. They're wonderful, they're extremely important pastors to the club, but in the long run, It's the casual ticket sales. It's the casual sports fans who are going to come out, are going to be the ones who are going to decide if a team is profitable or if it dies. And if you can't get those people on board, the hardcores will never bring you to break even. As much as important as they are, they're that important first step. They're an important building block. But they need stuff on top of the building block, which is corporate sales, corporate tickets, box seats, families, all of those things that generate a lot of money. Because you know what? As much as I love the supporters, they're not spending $15,000 a year on a box seat or on a special sort of event sort of package, which is what the other major league sports have done exceptionally well. Those private boxes, all of those things, all those luxury items that make the teams go and make the teams profitable. And those are the things that we have to look past, and the so-called business people have a better grasp of when they see what other sports do well.
So you talk about what FC Edmonton has to do on the business side, but as a soccer fan, what do you think? FC Edmonton has to do to get into the community to get all these things done? Like have a certain amount of people at the matches and to spend a lot of money.
Well, the stadium experience has to improve. The stadium, as any of you seen in broadcasts, it's I think the smallest in the league. It's at 4,500 seats, and it was expanded to 4,500 seats because obviously the first season that Edmonton played at Clark Field, it was only 1,200. But they had problems getting the new seats in terms of permissions, in terms of safety code, and finally it takes a long time. The paperwork took a long time to come through, but they're taking steps because it is a city-owned facility. It is shared with minor football. They are taking some steps to improve the fan experience. Like this year, largest scoreboard in the league is going in, actually larger than most MLS teams have. That's actually rolled in on an 18-wheel truck. It's actually quite spectacular when you see it. It's called the Titan.
I'm looking forward to it.
They're tight. They're going to have that behind one end now. It'll also sort of help close off one of those open ends of the field. And again, that's going to enhance the fan experience. But it's once people get to the stadium, they have to feel that there's a culture. Where Clark Field is located is right on the transit lines, right next door to Commonwealth Stadium. But at the same time, it's a little bit isolated. There's not like a lot of restaurants or shops around. It's not a place where you can go down and sort of meet your friends, fellow supporters, have a beer before the game, and then go to the game, and then maybe hang out afterwards to talk about the game. You got to drive, or you got to take the LRT to get to that point, and then head back downtown. So those are some of the challenges they face. So they really need to work on, it's fun to be in the stadium, it's engaging to be in the stadium. And I think that's the first thing to tackle in terms of making it or bringing those numbers up to where they need to be.
And you discuss a stadium, and maybe that's what is the end goal for FC Edmonton. But we can't get there unless they reach a certain attendance number, correct?
Yeah, the city council has told them, and they've had some very positive discussions with city council. But I think we all realize in North America, whether you're in Canada or the United States, that the era of just going to a city council and saying, give us $100 million for a stadium are over. Like, they're so politically unpopular. It's basically, well, yeah, we can give you this money for a stadium, but we won't get elected next time. And we're starting to see all these stadium votes get voted down. So the Edmonton solution is quite practical. It's you can get the stadium, but only if you can prove to us that there's the need for it. So FC Edmonton would need to show like that place has got 4,500 people in it every game. And the only time it's ever happened, it's happened maybe a couple of times, but the most significant time that was when played Vancouver in the Canadian Championship last year in the Cup game on a Wednesday night. It was packed. And it was as awesome as an experience as to follow FC Edmonton at a game that I've ever been at, where they played the Whitecaps and in the Cup game, and that had the big draw. People from Vancouver had come down to see the game. A team that, even though they're in a different league, we see maybe sees a bit of a regional rival, and so it was a much better turnout for the game than you would have for an NASL game. But we need to show that number so the city council says, okay, well, maybe we'll talk about expanding that stadium, about giving you the ability to raise that to 10,000 seats. But they're not going to do it on one 4,500 crowd. They're not going to do it on basically an average attendance of around 3,000. I mean, the announced attendances are usually around 3,200, 3,100. It's probably less in the building when you do the head count. I mean, I always say announced attendance because we know that announced attendances are never really the attendances because they go by paper counts and not by head counts. And they tried a few things that timing-wise didn't work out. Playing 2 games in Fort McMurray last year, which they had to do because of the Women's World Cup, or at least one of them they had to do because of the Women's World Cup, which only got about 1,000 fans out. When they played those 2 basically neutral site games, so there have been challenges, and I wish there was a magic bullet. I mean, you talk to different supporters, and all the supporters I talk to have different solutions. They're all probably valid. And like some say, can't we play at a different time? Do we have to play Sunday afternoons? And it's sort of like, well, television likes Sunday afternoons because Canada Saturday night's impossible to be on TV because of hockey. I think a lot of times Americans ask me about why the times are what they are, and they think about television in American terms, and they don't realize that in Canada, Saturday night is like the holy night for television, because whereas in the United States, it's a throwaway night, whereas because of hockey, Saturday night's untouchable. You don't put anything on Saturday night during hockey season against it. You don't touch hockey. You don't. It's like going against a Super Bowl every week. You just don't do it. So Saturday nights are a write-off. Can't maybe in the summer a few days you can do. So as they say Sunday. What about Friday nights? Well, the strongest crowd we ever had was on a weeknight for the Vancouver game. But would NASL love the idea that one team's playing midweek games in the evening at 9:30 Eastern time? Probably not. So there's no magic bullet really to solve a lot of the issues. You have to treat them one by one. And I think the first thing to do, and honestly, it's the first thing is making that stadium more welcoming for fans to go to.
So just increase the fan experience. That's what the Fath brothers and the new GM has to do.
Yeah, it has to be. I said the scoreboard's a start. Better food, better drinks, less lineups for things, just creating more of an atmosphere in the stadium that people want to return to and want to come back to. And I think that's where the supporters groups can play a really big part. And that's just being really great ambassadors for the club.
But it's great that they brought in a great guy. He knows what he's doing, has tons of experience, and he's just going to get it right with the Eddies.
Oh, you hope he gets it right. I mean, it's a big job. It's a big challenge. Whenever you're doing anything in this market, you're always battling that there's hockey and there's hockey and there's hockey, and when that's done, there's hockey. And so that's just the nature of where we're at in the market. I mean, we have an NHL team that hasn't made the playoffs in 10 years and yet still sells out every game. So it is you have the first 6 pages of the papers are taken up by the Oilers even in the summertime. So it is that culture that you have to sort of work into, and I think you don't try to compete against it. You have to start. You can't fight it. What you have to do is start asking those sections of the population to maybe embrace a little soccer. Like, why don't you try coming out to a game and not having us against them mentality, but say, hey, we're in a different market, we're in a different niche. We're doing our thing. Come and check us out.
Maybe they can cross promote. Like I saw on Twitter, another soccer team was working with another hockey team that I forgot about. So maybe you guys can have like a FC Edmonton Oilers night or something like that.
Well, I saw that Jacksonville Armada had a curling promotion, which I think is the greatest promotion ever in the history of the NASL, where they had I think they had the curling championships. I don't know why they would be there, but I think that was just fantastic. It's I do think there's lots of room for cross promotion, but they do have developed a bit of a partnership now with the Edmonton Eskimos, the CFL team. They have done some good things. Just reaching out and again, you just look at best practices. During the Western Final last year in the CFL, the Eskimos are the Grey Cup champions. But when in the Western Final, which they hosted last year, that scoreboard, which FC Edmonton didn't have permission yet to use again, safety codes and such, finally got approval as the season was already over. But they said, here, Eskimos, why don't you use it outside so people can watch the Eastern Final as they're filing in to watch the Western final. And so that was a really good sort of bit of opening cooperation. They have some cooperation. Their front offices know each other. They're neighbors. And again, I think that's a positive thing. Obviously, there was some in the past. There's been some griping between minor football and FC Edmonton about Clark Stadium, about the football lines, about the lack of football lines, about the new turf going in, about what times FC Edmonton uses the stadium, should they be there, and it was always a bit of a turf war. And hopefully, I think this outreach shows that FC Edmonton is not here to sort of colonize the sports scene in the city. And again, I think that's a worry that it's absurd, but I think we've all seen this sort of cultural worry that we have from fans of other sports that somehow soccer is trying to colonize their sports turf. And I think we just got to get away from that. I think FC Edmonton handshaking with the Eskimos does some good things for that.
Thanks, Steve, for coming on. Enjoy the chat about FC Edmonton. Best of luck this upcoming season. You're going to have the call on the local TV there in Edmonton. Best of luck. Best of luck to FC Edmonton. Hopefully they draw a great. Maybe this is going to be their year.
Yeah, hopefully. And I think the schedule maker's done them a few favors this year. I think the fact that we have a balanced schedule for the first time probably I've ever seen with FC Edmonton is great. The fact that we have home games in April, which we never had before. The team isn't going to disappear on a 4-week-long road trip because they're afraid that it's going to snow in Edmonton in April. My attitude's always been, Edmonton should get home games evenly. If we have to go play in Carolina in August when it's 100 degrees, it's just as bad as having a team from the South having to come up and play in the snow. My feeling is if you don't want to come play in the snow, don't schedule games in the Deep South in the summer. Be fair to everybody. Let everybody have the weather advantage, and I think Edmonton, Ottawa getting games in a more balanced schedule really helps because the teams don't disappear. And the fans, they're fine sitting in a little bit of cool temperatures.
You're really right on that one. So thanks again, Steve, for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You can follow us on Twitter at TotalNASL You can follow Steve as well on Twitter, right?
Yeah, it's at Steven Sandor, StevenSandor.
Give him a follow. Great FC Edmonton follow. And we will see you guys next week.